Please take your seats. We're about to get started. I'm very, very excited to have all of you here for this exciting panel on tech platforms for volunteering. I just want to give a quick overview of who and what is SF Tech for Good before we get started. We are the longest running tech meetup for good in social impact in the Bay Area, founded in 2006. We gather to explore different topics in social impact in tech every month. And details tonight, thanks to the Foundation. So thanks, Joel, and everyone here for coming and presenting about these topics. So a little bit more about our sponsors, TechSoup Global and the Hub Technology Network, N10. They provide sponsors for the meetup fees and food and all kinds of good stuff. So like a quick overview, if you're at a nonprofit, some freebies you can get from our sponsors. For example, TechSoup, which has other meetup groups like this one in over 20 countries around the world. And nonprofits can get anything from free or low-cost Microsoft Office to Skype access, refurbished computers, and recently Adobe Creative Cloud access, which is super pricey, as you may know. So nonprofits, check out TechSoup. Also, thanks to General Assembly tonight for providing the space and the pizza and helping out registration.
Yeah.
I also want to give the mic to Paul Collier of Net Impact.
Right on. Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, this is an awesome event. I'm excited to see everybody here. So we're just helping Catherine really do logistics tonight. Net Impact, as you might know, is a nonprofit organization. I run the San Francisco professional chapter of this organization. So if you're a professional in San Francisco and you're interested in making an impact with your career, we're really a group of like-minded individuals that want to help you do that. We want to help you find your vision and get the resources and the connections you need to make the impact. So actually, if you look back here, we got Steve and Tiffany are also part of our leadership team. Say hi. So if you have any questions about what we do as an organization, you can feel free to come and find us afterwards. Otherwise, you can enjoy this event. Thanks again for coming.
Thanks, Paul. Tonight's panel, Greg Baldwin, Joel Bashevkin, and Meg Erlinghouse of Bono, and the presentations. This is their background info here, you can see. They'll be giving some short overviews of their work before the panel gets started.
Great, welcome. I'm Joel Bashevkin, Executive Director for Taproot in San Francisco, also global programs. I'm really pleased for us all to be here today to be able to talk about tech platforms, the tech field, and especially heartened by the fact that our three organizations are all based in the Bay Area, founded themselves in the Bay Area, and are providing state-of-the-art field building for volunteer matching, all here from the Bay Area. So you wonder that this is probably one of the better places to be able to have this discussion. So do you mind if I just give a little context?
Yeah.
And then what we're going to do is each one of us is going to do a little dog and pony show with our platforms, give some context, and then we'll let the paneling begin. So to get us started, we set out tonight to sort of talk about two things. One is, what is the intersection of using technology to more quickly connect, make more accessible, more transparent, the relationship between nonprofits who are seeking professional help through volunteers and being able to bring volunteers in to help them with their organizations, and community members who really want to find their way to the right match, and how technology can be a way to break down those barriers and make much more accessible. And then secondly, the other topic we posed is, how can we do away with all of that project management, push it behind the scenes, so every moment we're spending on meaningful volunteer work is on the work, not on the spreadsheets, the phone calls, the emails, and such. So with that in mind, we wanted to poll you and find out a little bit more about you. How many work for nonprofits? How many are tech workers? How many are nonprofit tech workers? Kudos. How many of you personally have used, how many of you have walked in the door of a nonprofit and said, I want to volunteer? How many, well, keep those hands up. How many of you stayed volunteering for more than a week, for more than a few days? Score. All right, Arden. Secondly, how many of you have used either our platforms or some other platform to make that direct connection? Excellent. All right. All right. How many have come through a Taproot related platform? How many through a LinkedIn connection? How many through VolunteerMatch? Excellent. All right, other questions? Do we want to find out?
No, I just gotta pay the $20 to the people that raise their hand.
How many people care about the Warriors game? So should we do every 10 minutes? Who wants to be the Warriors scorekeeper? That's on their app. Who's up for doing it? All right.
Good.
Every 15 minutes, will you just shout out the Warriors score?
Remember what's going on at that moment.
Aaron,
All right,
I
Aaron's our
just checked, and I
scorekeeper.
think the Warriors are losing by 6 points. But yeah,
Well, 2024.
2024.
No need to leave the room. Stay right here. All right, any other check-in questions?
No.
All right, who's?
How's this going? Yeah.
And is it easier just to talk without a microphone? I'll speak for myself.
It's about the same.
The mic.
Microphone, all right.
Microphone it is. So just a little bit, so I'm Greg Baldwin. I, 15 years ago now, feels like a very long time ago, a friend of mine from college called me and said, I'm going to build a website to make it easier for everybody to find a local volunteer opportunity. I didn't really know what the web was at that point exactly, but this is like, what, 1997 when he called? And I had my Apple computer at home, and I convinced him I knew more about the internet than he did, and told him I should be his new webmaster / chief imagination officer. And we built in the spring of 1998 from my bedroom in Boston a little website that was going to try to make it easier for good people and good causes to connect. Fast forward 15 years, VolunteerMatch has now matured into a national service. Supports over 100,000 local nonprofits who are looking to recruit volunteers for everything from their board positions to beach day cleanups and mentoring programs and everything in between. We have a team of about 40, and the project that we're still working on that we started with so many years ago was how can you make it easier for people to find an opportunity to make a difference in the local community. And when we looked out at the space 15 years ago, it seemed like there was a lot of talk and rhetoric and people saying, hey, you should volunteer, but it wasn't really that easy to find a place that was aligned with your interests and passions. And VolunteerMatch is really trying to be a web platform that takes the ecosystem of the marketplace of volunteering and allows everybody in it to find what they're looking for. It helps nonprofits find the people that are most interested in supporting their mission, the work that they're doing. Helps volunteers find their passions and their interests. And we've also done a lot of work with companies and other third parties that are interested in aligning around volunteer engagement or inviting their employees or their students into finding opportunities. So to give you a sense for how a little bit of the system, for those of you who haven't been here in a while, this is one of my favorite little pages. This is the live map on VolunteerMatch. And who remembers the Zappos map? About 4 or 5 years ago, Zappos came out with a map that showed whenever someone bought a shoe anywhere in America, and they would like put the shoe up on a big map. And we thought that was pretty cool, so we hacked it. Instead of it being shoes, what you're looking at is a real-time view of the VolunteerMatch network in action right now. So all of these little pink things that are coming up, these are people that are on the network right now searching for a local volunteer opportunity. You can see it's bringing up their either their location or the keyword they put in. This is kind of our secret little PRISM program here at VolunteerMatch, where rather than spying on people for national security reasons, it's for generosity purposes. And you can see that all of the hands represent an individual who's logged into the system and found a local volunteer opportunity and responded to it. And this activity right now, you can see we average about, right now we're averaging about 240, 250 connections every hour. So it's a pretty active marketplace. You can see right now, because of the Warriors game and because it's after hours, we got about 155 connections this past hour. But this happens day after day, and one of the things I think I'm most proud of is that volunteering is so often viewed as kind of an event that just happens, at the holidays, or you go with your kids at Thanksgiving or Christmas or Rosh Hashanah or whatever your holiday is that you're celebrating, and you give back once a year. And we really are proud that VolunteerMatch creates a marketplace that people can give back on the other 63 days of the year. It's really cool to watch that. So that's a little bit about me. I think we're each going to do our little quick demos, and I'm also proud to say, first of all, it's an honor. I haven't been to an event like this in a long time in San Francisco, and sometimes up in the building you forget about how much energy and excitement and innovation is out there in the Bay Area, and it's a real privilege to see all of you out there and that you're interested in the work that we're doing, and I've had a couple of conversations, and it sounds like the best is yet to come. There's some great ideas that I heard just as I was mixing and mingling before the event. So thanks for being here. So Meg Garlinghouse, LinkedIn, for good. The big boy.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. And I wanted to echo, it is really exciting to be here and see so many people are excited about this work. So I'm Meg. I've been at LinkedIn for about 5 years. Before that, I was at Yahoo. I ran Yahoo for Good for 9 years. I have to say I overstayed my welcome. But when I first joined LinkedIn, I wasn't focused full-time on LinkedIn for Good. I was focused on a number of other initiatives, but now it's my full-time job, and I have a team of about 4 people. And the way the LinkedIn for Good story started out is when I first started, the profile experience did not have the opportunity to include your volunteer and causes section. It was actually the #1 most requested feature from our customers. So we added it about 4 years ago. Oh, by the way, this is interactive, and Aaron, I'm going to ask you to pull up the score in 2 minutes. So we added volunteer and causes section because, as Greg mentioned, around the notion of making volunteerism and social impact a norm was really, really interesting to us. So how can we bake it into someone's professional identity and then move it out of the thing you did on Saturday mornings or the thing you did when you were 65 and retired, and move it into the norm of the way in which you approached your life and who you were as a professional identity. So any guesses on how many people have added the volunteer and causes section on LinkedIn? Greg Baldwin may not answer. There's prizes. I mentioned prizes. Does anyone know how many members are on LinkedIn?
1 million.
100 million.
382 million.
That's very close. I'll give it to Lori. I was consulting here, so I knew this. You get. All right. So of the 382 million, any guesses on how many have added the volunteer and causes section?
100 million.
I guess that's kind of a random guess, right? Okay, 17 million people have added it. Any guesses week over week how many additional people added?
50,000.
400,000 people week over week add the volunteer and causes section. When we launched it, guess how many people added it week over week?
Counting me or not counting me?
Counting Greg. 76. I'm not joking. This is a true hockey stick growth pattern where nobody did it, and then people started seeing people doing it. It really has become a norm. And I also think there's been an enormous tailwind and tidal wave of millennials who are really, really leading our way and insisting that social impact is becoming the norm. So I was going to pick on Lauren because I'm pretty sure she has the volunteer and causes section on her profile. I'm hoping Lauren tell me it's true. Yes? Yeah. Okay. She has a beautiful profile, by the way. So if you scroll down, here's the volunteer and causes section. And then what is really interesting is opportunities to learn. So in this section, you can include your volunteer experience, the causes you care about, and the organizations you support. If you click on one of these links, the hyperlinks you to other people in your network that also support that cause. But here's probably the most interesting thing we've done since I've been at LinkedIn, which is you can check a box that you're interested in either doing skill volunteering or serving on a board. So here's another notebook question. Actually, Aaron, what's the score?
26-28.
We're now by 2.
Nice.
So of the 17 million people who have added this section, how many people have said that they either want to serve on a board or do skill volunteering? Yes. Yes. How many people?
75%.
Of the 17 million, how many people have said?
17 million.
So it has to be less than 17 million. 6 is exactly right. So what's most extraordinary about this is now it's a search facet. So if you're a nonprofit living here right now, you can literally go and search for people who live in the Bay Area. Hold on. You can search for people who live in the Bay Area. If you don't remember anything else from today, remember this. I'm going to give you the biggest secret on LinkedIn, that 90% of the stuff is free. If you just click on this link right here. Got it? Advanced. Oh, ignore that. So this is what you'll see, and then you're going to scroll down, and you're going to, if you're a nonprofit looking for resources, you go to nonprofit interests. Actually, is there a nonprofit who's looking for a board member, a skill volunteer? Just do a live demo. Yes. What are you looking for?
A board member.
A board member? Okay, so let's just do board member. Do you want them to work at Google?
Sure.
Yeah? Because they're getting paid a lot.
Or LinkedIn.
Okay, well, that's nice of you. Okay, so if you scroll here, I'm going to add third-degree connections. All right, so people who, let's say the Bay Area, right? So people who are on LinkedIn, live in the Bay Area, want to serve on the board and work with Google, there's 1,500. And they're like this guy, do you guys know who he is?
Yeah.
He'd be a really good board member. Yeah, I will introduce you. So that's pretty awesome, right? So here's another giveaway. How many people live in the Bay Area and want to do skill volunteer work and work at Apple? Guesses? 1,000. Who said 1,000? I'm just giving this away. Someone said 1,000. All right, so that's one way to find skill volunteers on LinkedIn. There's 6 million people who would raise their hand, and we can talk about whether or not that's a real signal or a fake signal in a minute. And the other thing I want to show you is the other way that we are helping this marketplace is by ingesting skilled volunteer board opportunities onto LinkedIn. So we partner with VolunteerMatch and Taproot and Catchfire, a whole bunch of organizations, so that nonprofits don't have to double type, as Megan Smith says. She doesn't like people double typing, so she's trying to simplify the marketplace. Megan Smith is our new CTO of the White House. So if you are already working with VolunteerMatch or Taproot, we know that you've placed a skilled volunteer on their platform, so we ingest it onto LinkedIn to increase the number of applicants. So those show up in a thing that we call the volunteer marketplace, which is at volunteer.linkedin.com. You just go to explore opportunities. It defaults to where you are, so if you just click on this first one, it even shows you how many applicants. So this really odd volunteer for opportunities, public speaking and accent training instructor. I don't know what that is, but 6 people have already applied for it. So again, the demand is huge from our members. If you're a nonprofit, I'm happy to give you some free posting codes if you aren't already working with Taproot or VolunteerMatch. And I think that's all for right now.
All right, that was wonderful, Meg. I just have to say this is maybe more fun for me than for you, because my best friends who are working in this area have really inspired me and inspired us. For those of you who don't know about Taproot Foundation, we got founded here 15 years ago to really break down the barrier to bring nonprofit need to amazing opportunities that are there that volunteers can participate in. And in our realm, we think the highest demand work that nonprofits really need is custom consulting, provided what we call in a pro bono manner. So we spend a lot of our time working with nonprofits to advocate for them, to get resources where they're able to get new websites, new databases, new marketing campaigns, get help with their leadership development and board recruitment and areas around strategy and finance, and be able to make the translation of those key business professional skills with the nonprofit professionals as they need it. And to date, since we got started, we've been able to deliver about 1.5 million hours of consulting. And we're just on our hockey stick has just gotten started in many ways. And I'm pleased to share with you what for us was a culmination of many of our years as we spent much of our time doing the project management, providing incredibly high touch, high quality support so that every volunteer and every nonprofit felt that they were treated and received all the resources and counsel and advocacy and management resources that they needed to be successful to complete these projects, the 1.5 million hours that I mentioned. So about 2 years ago, we saw that we had learned basically just about every lesson we're still learning lessons, but the vast majority of the lessons we were hoping to learn about what separated the successful engagements from the unsuccessful ones, and we've honed in on the moments that mattered. So we went to the people behind the book Lean Startup, Neo Innovations, and they created a minimal viable product website and platform, which is the match.com for pro bono, and this is called Taproot Plus. So I'll take you quickly through this. So it's right off of our basic website, which is taprootfoundation.org, and you'll see that it's basically 2 doorways. If you're a nonprofit, you'll go in one doorway and quickly set up a project. If you're a volunteer, interested in volunteering, you'll go through another doorway. You'll look at some of the projects that are available. You'll fill out a short application form. Nonprofits fill out a very short application form, and then we manage it. We even have help along the way with some of our staff. We've actually created a meme around them because they're just so adorable. And it's basically how it works, very straightforward. We're committed to this being absolutely free to the nonprofits. For us, their skin in the game is committing to be an active and attentive client of this kind of work, and to be highly thoughtful about the volunteerism they're getting. So we're underwriting it through sponsors like the ones you see at the bottom in order to afford that instead of it being a cost prohibitive. It doesn't cost the volunteers anything other than their time. So I'll give you just a quick look at some of the projects that you might come across. We're basically asking you to, as a volunteer, tell us about your expertise. Typically, being able to list a few different ones. Then you can browse, and as projects come online from nonprofits, and they're coming in from all over the world, it'll send a reminder email and say, hey, there's a new project that came up that meets your skills. Are you interested? Automatically schedules time for you to talk to each other, and if you agree that this is a great thing to do forward, you'll start. We provide all of these resources so that it'll support you during all conversations, and we're there at every step of the way. It basically is a high-touch experience for all involved, but from an operational perspective, it's very low touch. So we're only focused on addressing the problems. So let's just actually take a look at some of the projects, just to give you a sense of what is populated right now. We got started in October with a soft launch. We're still basically in a soft launch, but we've delivered about $1 million worth of pro bono. We have 3,000 volunteers on the site, and it's a very active environment with a few hundred projects that are already completed. So you see they run the gamut of website design. You'll see that they can be done mostly remotely. It's approximately a 30-hour project that we help scope them to, which is one of the critical issues. that we often face is making sure that these are designed with the right scope and scale that meets the needs of the organization and draws on the right expertise of the volunteer and can be done within that time window. So I invite you to go take a look at this, and I'll say that that's the first look at this program. So we're going to transition to covering some things. We might play some games with each other. I'm not quite sure how this is going to go. But we'd like to cover a few topics that come to mind for us. But ultimately, honestly, this is about you and what you perceive, your areas of interest, your questions, your observations is going to be critical.
Yeah, I just wanted to, we were going to ask at the beginning, what are, just a few folks in the room, what are some of the expectations? What do you want to get out of the next 45 minutes? Any questions that you had when you came in, just what you're thinking? A few folks want to volunteer, just what they're hoping to get out of it? Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a question, if you guys can touch on it or not, is about, you guys are mainly nonprofits, given that we're in the tech space. Like, how is being a nonprofit, advantageous and disadvantageous, given that you're also in the tech space at the same time?
Cool. Well, we put that on the list. Some other expectations? Sure.
I was just wondering about zeroing in on different parts of the Bay Area. I know I come up from the South Bay, and it would be awesome to be able to not just have a broad bucket for San Francisco Bay Area, but actually be able to narrow in on where things are. So I was wondering if you could speak to that when you get to it.
Sure, yeah.
I came here to understand what are the tools to find volunteers in the U.S. for World Cleanup Day in 2018.
Awesome. All right. You came to the right place, for sure. I think it's these three. Yeah.
Best practices when you are the nonprofit managing a volunteer and how to go about making most of the experience with both parties.
For sure, that's a great one. Those are good. Yeah, just a couple more just to kind of fill our heads up with expectation. Go ahead.
Just wonder if you could address the role of social businesses on your platforms and businesses that have a social purpose but aren't necessarily 501c3s.
Right on.
So I work at a software development company, and we just started teaching kids how to code. And so just wondering how to make the most of it and get people involved, but not take too much away from their job.
Those are good ones.
So, score?
Yeah, the score. I was going to say, what's the score?
31-34. We're still down.
So Joel, where do you want to
That
start?
must be on the bench.
Where do you want to start with some of those?
I don't know. Before we jump on these, were there some observations either of you have just about this space?
In the context of some of these questions and just kind of answering some of them, like business, nonprofit, partnerships, volunteering, it's really interesting the space that we started in we started as a not-for-profit organization, mostly because we didn't know any better. And it actually, when we first started during 1999 and 2000, we actually considered becoming a for-profit because we thought it'd be easier to raise a big plug of capital. And we didn't do it for two reasons, which I think is kind of interesting, and I'm not sure if I'd rethink that today. But the two reasons we ended up not doing it was, A, we looked down Sand Hill Road and looked at our own financials and really just couldn't see the 100x return on making the world safe for volunteering. Where could you generate that much money? If you got a $10 million investment, you'd need to be a $100 million organization for anybody to be interested, and we couldn't make that connection. And second, we felt that in the nonprofit world, there was some examples at that point. There was a big company back when we first got started called Charitable Way that had raised $40 million, and secretly they were trying to put the United Way out of business. Their argument was United Way takes 18 cents out of every dollar, Charitable Way is going to take 10 cents out of every dollar, and we're going to get all this money from SoftBank, and we're going to get rich, and we're going to make the nonprofit sector more efficient. and the world's going to be a better place. We're going to change the way America gives. It was really interesting to watch the nonprofit sector reject them, not because the argument didn't make sense, but just because they didn't align with their values. And like the nonprofits literally just wouldn't play the game. And for a charitable way to succeed, they needed to get people to give them the ETF number so they could do a digital transaction instead of cutting checks. It was really interesting to watch that it didn't succeed, and ultimately, that $40 million went away. So I guess, kind of to the questions of nonprofits and should you be a for-profit and not-for-profit. I'm excited about the B Corps. I'm excited about the blurry lines, but I do think that I think that good fences make good neighbors, and there's something about the nonprofit sector which still has a freedom and an independence from either the pressures of making money or kind of the bureaucratic constraints of government that is really important to a healthy society. And that no amount of B Corps-ness is ever going to be as independent as a library is to pursue a social mission as opposed to having a real economic foundation. So I think it's really important. And that gives a little bit of context of just kind of volunteering in the nonprofit sector.
And I would say for us, we're very much a mission-driven organization. Our objective, our get out of business objective, is that the vast majority of American citizens will see giving back their expertise as part of their professional career arc and their ethic. You hear about corporate social responsibility. This is professional social responsibility, and that to be taken seriously by nonprofits, to run a grant-making program with nonprofits, it is to be a nonprofit ourselves. One of the interesting points, obviously, that we have to deal with is we work with thousands of nonprofits. We are struggling in a broken economic model that nonprofits have. So we're caught up in that too. Regardless of the amazing venture philanthropy we're able to secure to do this kind of scale-based work. But I'm heartened by the fact that, especially in this area, the hybrids and the social enterprises that are emerging both here and I'll be honest, Southeast Asia are just amazing in what they're able to accomplish. And we have dedicated ourselves, changed our mission in order to embrace those mission-driven organizations with our services. And we found that the volunteers are up to the challenge. They're not seeing these organizations, the social enterprises, as being business-driven, but social impact-driven.
And the only thing I would quickly add is, how many of you are job seekers here, or thinking about career switching? It's amazing. When I graduated from college 25 years ago, you chose one of three lanes. You were going to go work for a nonprofit, you can work for a corporation, you can work for the government. My understanding is kids today, the millennials, those lines are extremely blurred. If you want to go make an impact on the world, any three of those buckets is available to you. And I don't think it's even the way that this generation thinks anymore. Whereas, it was clear, you chose a lane, you stayed in your lane. People are lifetimers of government, they were lifetimers in IBM, they were lifetimers at Save the Children. And if anything, I think the world has seen a huge value of what people call the tri-sector athlete, like the person who actually has worked in all three sectors in a way that makes them an even more effective employee.
So I got a question for both of you that maybe it'll keep us moving in that kind of probing with some of these things. So we've all been in this space for a long time now, many years. From your perspective, what's the most surprising thing that you've learned that you think gets in the way of more volunteering, more engagement, a stronger nonprofit sector from your experience?
Well, I think the signals in the volunteer marketplace are not clear signals. So as I mentioned, we have 6 million people on our network who, on their profile, have stated they want to just go volunteering. And we have about 75,000 opportunities in the US, UK, and Ireland. But we still don't get, we'd like to have between 5 and 6 applicants per opportunity, and we're not there. And in addition, we'd like to get more opportunities, and we're not there. And the way the product person once described it to me is the marketplace, strong marketplaces happen when there is a on one side of the marketplace, there can be a nice to have, a want to have, and a need to have. And when there's a need to have on one side and a need to have on the other side, that's when marketplaces just start to work. The Beanie Baby example from eBay was a classic example, where it was a wedge case, but people who wanted Beanie Babies really wanted/needed them. And people who had the Beanie Babies probably wanted to get rid of them, didn't need to get rid of them. But regardless, those create some strong signals. In the volunteer marketplace, what we see from the LinkedIn standpoint is that there's a nice to have and a nice to have, with the one exception of board members, which nonprofits need to have board members. And it's a slightly stronger signal on the professional side too, because there's a strong interest from professionals wanting to serve on boards. But outside of that, the signals tend to be weak, and therefore, there has to be a trigger that makes that match happen. I'd love to hear what Greg's perspective is on that. How do you move the person from the nice or want into the need and move them into a volunteer opportunity?
And this kind of addresses the, how do you do good volunteer engagement? And by the way, we'll put a plug in later. We just wrote a book, and Meg and Taproot both contributed chapters. It's really focused on successful volunteer engagement. The book's called Volunteer Engagement 2.0. But I think that the larger question on how you get to the needs, we see what's keeping the marketplace slow, very, I think, ironically for us, is that the demand for volunteers is far weaker than our stereotypes and beliefs are. Kind of the core narrative is nonprofits are, they're under-talented, they don't have the resources, they're somewhat desperate, they're charity cases, they're doing nice things and they're nice people, but if you show up, God, there's so much they can't do. They must need every volunteer that would show up at their door. They're desperate people, right? These are desperate organizations, and you can show up as a volunteer and save the day, right? So it feeds kind of our hero complex from the volunteer point of view. All of that is a colossal myth. The organizations that are really good at volunteer engagement are well-resourced, well-led. It's the Obama campaign, which is like how much was it, $900 million they raised? They plowed huge amounts of money into successful volunteer engagement. They created a place for everybody to get involved and share their stories and contribute. It's enormously difficult for a nonprofit to successfully engage volunteers. Taproot, I think, is an illustration of just how hard that is. I think that's why Taproot is so successful, because they come to a nonprofit and say, hey, look, you've got some real high-end projects that we can help you with, and we can help you structure it. And what ends up happening in the field is, because there isn't the perception in the field among nonprofits, which I think is the dirty little secret, is that most nonprofits, volunteers, maybe. Like, oh, it's such a pain in the ass. Right?
If it weren't for that the perceived power dynamic of someone walks in your door and says, "Can I help?" You're trained to say, "Yes, of course." Well, but what we've spent so much time is empowering nonprofits to say no in order to get to the correct yes.
Yeah.
So to Meg's point, to have this be a demand-driven experience, so that when the volunteer comes in, they've already been envisioned. Their LinkedIn profile was scanned over. They were sought after, and they were wanted because there's a future that this organization wants to get to, and you're a linchpin for that. So being able to bolster nonprofits to change that power dynamic and to be much more proactive and to be able to articulate a vision whereby community members are not in the way, are not painting walls, we often argue about all these walls that keep getting repainted because that's where the corporate team shows up to do. But instead being able to have the organization say, really, we have some serious work on our agenda for this year, and we cannot find that immensely expensive general operating support to afford those critical projects, to be able to get these important things done. So it just gets pushed off another year, it gets pushed off, and the impact gets delayed and deferred and diminished. And the staff will see and feel that they're on their own and they're chasing things that aren't essential. So these are some of the introductory relationships to be very mindful of, and just be aware that you are your own masters and you can change the dynamic and that narrative of what you're coming into and what you hope to accomplish together.
Yeah, and I think in the end, even though we see all those stereotypes, we can also see how things are changing. And there are, what I think Aaron Hurst, who is the founder of Taproot, once described it as the positive deviants, the organizations that really understand volunteer engagement in a way that goes beyond just getting work done that the staff doesn't want to do, but rather viewing people's participation in your organization as a lever for strengthening your network, strengthening your philanthropy, and expanding your mission, not just doing something that otherwise is difficult to get done. And those positive deviants, I think, are driving the marketplace. In California, we see it, we see it at the Taproot. We see it in the California libraries. The California libraries now are reinventing their volunteering program to align with both their political and their philanthropic footprint. They're engaging people in the libraries not to just stack books, but to make them feel a part of the library, so that when the library's funding is up for renewal at a local level, they've got a built-in constituency that's like, hey, I'm a part of the library. So it's not just getting stuff done, and that mindset shift is really the core of the marketplace that we're building. And I think the one that Taproot is certainly trying to strengthen and reinforce, and I think it's the one that LinkedIn members will ultimately be able to engage with and enter into. And I think one of the nicest things about the work that LinkedIn did was unlike a lot of corporations who just kind of show up and presume that VolunteerMatch is too stupid to know what it's doing, and like, we can do that better than you. Or say it to anybody in the space. LinkedIn really listened, and we were in a meeting with Reid Hoffman. He's like, what would be the biggest thing you could do? And we were like, letting your members make their volunteer experiences real and a part of their online professional profile, because that sets a tone and it establishes a professionalism and an alignment with the best and the brightest that we think will really be great for the long term. And then, to LinkedIn's credit, they did it. And now we're desperately trying to keep up with the demand side, so that 17 million people actually have something to do. So if you want to talk to me afterwards about fundraising or building some new systems, because our challenge is still the market making on the nonprofit side.
Oh, I have a provocative question around is all skilled volunteering pro bono equal? So Taproot does it very, very high quality, high touch, deep engagement, which I don't think there's any debate that the output is super impactful for your organization. Whereas I think some of the skilled volunteer opportunities that show up on VolunteerMatch are a little more lightweight. So I'd love to hear both your perspectives on, does it all depend, or should we be trying to get more Taproot engagements, or do we need to expand the base by trying to get more people just to dip their toe into a skilled volunteer?
Tastes great, that's Phil.
Yeah.
Picking a fight. I like it. You want to go first?
Yeah, let me actually talk about our evolution. The program we were founded on, we actually took a command control kind of approach to address the fact that the vast majority of pro bono being done in the United States was bad. People were having one experience and running for the hills. So we did a control model where we controlled all the variables. That's pretty expensive. We built the service grant program that's 5 volunteers over 6 months. They get all kinds of resources. It's a competitive process. Labor intensive, but amazing deep outcomes that move the needle forward for that organization. So since that time, and about 4 years ago, we started working with corporations to help them design and launch their own programs. In a sense, it's our own social enterprise model. It's about 40% of Taproot right now, is helping corporations effectively engage, especially the millennials, in these kinds of impactful community opportunities. In the midst, we've developed a range of models that are all still holding accountable to that high impact, high quality, high value engagements where everybody moves forward. But now we're moving away from strictly that long-term model. We're doing 1-hour virtual consulting over Hangouts. We're doing done-in-a-day programs. We're doing a lot of scoping work. We're helping people get counsel on exactly how to move from the presenting problem into like a real understanding of what the underlying problem is and develop a work plan to address those. And the Taproot Plus, as I mentioned, is a month and a half long. So we've been responding to that pretty much because time and urgency is now the new currency of the realm. For nonprofits, leadership, for all that they're facing, for business professionals, if it isn't real-time, responsive, to address incremental needs, it's going to be difficult to be able to look down the road even 6 months from now. So we have adapted to that marketplace in order to make a range of opportunities available to volunteers and to the nonprofits on a demand basis.
Well, of course, VolunteerMatch is better. No, I would say that, you know, they kind of like, can a nonprofit do pro bono without a third party? Of course. Do they do it well every time? Of course not. And I think, you know, I think Taproot, I think in my view, what's so great about Taproot is actually twofold. It's not just pro bono, but it's also pro bono as a team in most instances. And I think people crave that camaraderie of volunteering together, and I think that's the double whammy that makes Taproot so successful. And if you've ever done a Taproot project, you know, I know so many people have, and I've done it myself. Being a part of a team, you know, with 4 other folks, working on a marketing plan or something for a nonprofit organization, you get a real sense of team, and that's great. And that's hard to do if you're a nonprofit without all that framework and structure in place. The best pro bono stuff that we see on VolunteerMatch is really more independent work. So we see a lot of people that are looking for a Drupal developer, you know, that come in and fix our website. I would consider that pro bono. Nonprofits are perfectly capable of saying our Drupal site sucks and we need to fix it. And this is what we want. I think in our own life, our board chair works at Cooley. We've gotten 15 years of pro bono legal service that never required an intermediary. That's like incredible. We had a great relationship last year with Deloitte, who we reached out to, and they provided us with a security assessment / audit of the VolunteerMatch infrastructure. We worked with a top-notch team. It's what they do every single day. They waived their fees. It was great. But again, it was kind of a solo contributor doing the work that they do every day on their job. And there's like, it's that definition of pro bono that I think the original definition of pro bono is much more, you have some professional skills and you want to give them back. And it's doctor, lawyering. And the place where there's so much opportunity is like in marketing and consulting and some of the other stuff where I think Taproot has added a lot of structure to a marketplace that's still evolving and growing. In the end, I would love to see one day where you kind of have a baseline of, you know, kind of, you get people out doing beach day cleanups and being part of the, you know, a marathon or a cyclathon, and then you've got, on top of that, you've got some more skilled stuff, and then you've got some more pro bono, and then you got board leadership, and it becomes kind of more of a pyramid, which is probably, I think, I probably saw that at a Taproot conference at some point. So I probably just stole that totally.
But you did it so well.
Did I do it okay? And then that would be a healthier marketplace. And VolunteerMatch would be right kind of down the bottom, you know, and right down to the direct consumers. And then you've got all this layering in the marketplace that makes it that much more successful. And actually, maybe we wouldn't even be at the bottom. It might be LinkedIn is at the bottom, maybe. And then, you know, VolunteerMatch would be a bit of an intermediary on the nonprofit side, because the front end might very well be through a big partnership with LinkedIn, but we've never convinced them to get off that old skill bandwagon. All volunteering.
Yeah,
That's good.
I'm good.
Good idea.
Yeah, so I did want to just touch on, for the nonprofits in the room, and also for anyone thinking to volunteer, just some best practices to keep in mind that becomes a mantra. One is, think about this relationship as something that has real value and cost. So we tell nonprofits, act like it's your paying client. Another is an adage that probably came from the Peace Corps: seek to understand before being understood. Spend time learning about each other. Don't jump to conclusions and start thinking you can like solve everything quickly. There's amazingly creative, resourceful people working in nonprofits who are really looking for a thought partner and someone who asks the right questions. Often the right questions are some of the best way to make a deep, lasting relationship. Learning goes both ways. Again, breaking down that power dynamic. you're seeking something regardless of which way you're walking in the door. And there are a couple of others that I've probably forgotten, but just realize that volunteering is stepping out of your norm, but if you bring something with you into that relationship that is your anchor for Taproot, it's you're bringing your skill set. You do it during the day, you're very comfortable with it, you're entering into a new environment, new territory, new paradigms, new needs, and at least you have that as your anchor as you discover and synthesize and adapt and grow. The employers that we've talked to, they're saying that those are the professionals that they are investing in and retaining and developing because of the kind of approach to community, but also to taking on challenges above and beyond.
And by the way, we in a recent survey to hiring managers worldwide, we learned that 42% of hiring managers in the U.S. consider volunteer experience equivalent to full-time experience. In other words, if you have something on your LinkedIn profile, and if you still have a resume, that says something that you helped, you used your social media skills to help a nonprofit organization to develop a social media plan, that the hiring manager considers that full-time experience.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
And much better than putting a hole-in-one on other skills that I see all the time, like people talk about their golf game, on their resume that we would get, or from their LinkedIn profile.
You can't put hole-in-one on your LinkedIn profile.
That's good.
Delete
So,
it.
you don't have the hole-in-one deal yet. So my 2 pieces of advice for nonprofits: be finicky and be particular. If you're recruiting someone, there's an expectation, kind of a low expectation. We just need warm bodies. It's the least successful way to recruit somebody. Be very particular. If you're looking for someone who's interested in education and has an experience overseas and wants to do grant writing or wants to do technical work or wants to be a mentor, be specific about what you need and the role that person's going to fill, because that's what volunteers are looking for. And if you're a volunteer, do your homework. Don't just show up at an organization and say, I'm here to fix you because I'm really smart and you're a nonprofit and I heard you guys needed some help. Do some homework, whether it's using one of the services and learning more about them, or just going to their website, finding out who and what they're all about. Because the more you know about the organization, my view is it's hard to be helpful if you haven't really been asked to be helpful. And I think that's one of the systemic problems of volunteering is the presumption that you can show up and that the nonprofit's going to accommodate you. Imagine if you showed up at an organization just said, I'm here to work, give me a job, and then you begin the negotiation of, really, what are you good at? And that's the norm in volunteering. And there's still people out there, kind of leaders that say that that's the way it should and ought to be. And I feel like there's some room for that once you get to know somebody. But it seems like it will be a much more, increase the likelihood that you find a good match from the beginning if you do some homework and find out an organization that needs some help that you're really good at. Start there, rather than kind of trying to negotiate it on the fly, which happens, but it's always stressful. And I know from a nonprofit, once a year we'll have someone show up, ring the doorbell. I mean, it's VolunteerMatch. There's 100,000 opportunities that they somehow missed on the website, and they'll show up and be like, I'm just looking for a volunteer opportunity. I was wondering if you need some help. And I'm like, for Christ's sake, really? And then they'll show up and they'll literally, we had a guy in that he said we were doing a bad job because we didn't have a 24-hour customer support line. And that was his advice to me. He was my pro bono advisor. You need a 24-hour helpline. I'm like, really? It's like, no, that's not really the help I needed today. So that's a little bit of advice.
Aaron, what's the score?
37-44, I'm still down.
Damn.
Okay, we're gonna stop asking here.
So Joel, can I ask you a question? 5 minutes? Quick one. So it's biggest challenge that you have going forward to the success of Taproot Plus.
In 5 minutes or less?
Yes!
The list goes down my arm and all the way out the door. My biggest challenge, honestly, is nonprofits who are gun shy, who've been burned in one way or another, and are afraid to take another chance on trusting their mission to the hands of a volunteer, even though it's just a shared trust. We wrote, powered by Pro Bono, I'll read the book at some point, in order to help bolster nonprofits to step out from behind the screen and become more proactive, more engaging, to share our society's biggest challenges with their community members and to work together to solve them. I think that would be one. And being a nonprofit, I have to say, it's raising money to support our work. Even though we have an incredibly high leverage model, where a little bit of our staff time translates into amazing time and value from insanely smart and talented and dedicated professional volunteers. Even just getting that incremental piece is always a challenge to be able to secure on an ongoing basis. One of the important reasons we're working with corporations and coming up with new program models that are highly efficient, highly turnkey, and highly scalable.
You want to?
Well, I think we should throw it back out to the audience. Did we answer all the questions that they?
I think those who might have some specifics would come to us.
Okay.
Joel, you pick.
This question is directed first for Greg, a little bit of Joel. When it comes to corporate philanthropy, I think of it in two buckets. I think of the pro bono consulting opportunities and then the generalized opportunities that are team volunteering individual. Right. And a lot of times when it comes to individual volunteering, you sometimes have one person from that organization on the corporate side being the middleman, having to take the intake of, I want my team to be on June 23rd, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I want to deal with puppies. How can I get my team involved? Right. And a lot of times as you scale as a company, that position, that's all they focus on. And I see, your platform, and even Joel to some extent, a gold mine to be able to integrate an internal management platform that a company has into your platform as well. And I was wondering if you guys right now work with any companies that are doing so, because when it comes to that full spectrum of how corporate volunteering and how you engage your employees and how you record those opportunities, no one's really doing that right now. So I was kind of wondering if you guys have anything right now in place.
I can jump on that quickly.
Sure.
So when we work with companies, before we get started, we have strategy discussions around CSR impact objectives because there's no reason to engage in pro bono work unless you've got certain outcomes in mind. So we're able to have Taproot Plus and other programs be able to focus on the impact objectives, the social impact objectives of the company. And typically we're working and developing these programs in response to a lot of those diffuse kind of volunteer activities that never add up to anything substantial. And the employees see behind the screen, the curtain. They see that this is one and done kind of experiences, and they're looking for deeper, longer. And I would say that that's something that we're trying to enable in our work is to optimize those opportunities and to let those more passive ones just sort of live their own lives.
And I totally agree. I think that when it comes to pro bono consulting and that type of volunteering, that is specific to the company initiative. But when it comes to most of the volunteering, usually in a corporation, when it comes to a large scale, is around 40 or 50% individual opportunities that are kind of the gateway drug to actually getting to the point where they're going to be serving the actual initiatives in the pro bono space. So that's why I was kind of wondering what the VolunteerMatch space is. Yeah. Only the fact that how can we get more employees engaged without having to worry about hiring 500 or 600 headcounts to deal with that automation.
So good news and bad news. The good news is we have about 150 companies that we provide that service to. We private label VolunteerMatch to support their employee volunteering programs. The bad news is you had no idea about it. And I think as a small organization, we don't have a lot of marketing horsepower. And 150 companies is awesome, but in the Bay Area, the Gap, Charles Schwab, some of our big clients, Union Bank, are all using the VolunteerMatch platform to try and solve for that problem. So we got a whole bunch of individuals. How do we find opportunities for everybody? How do we get them involved in the community, making a real difference? We've had a lot of success there, but we still need to scale it a lot more. And I'm happy to follow up with you, afterwards. But we are trying to do that.
Yeah, and I think between your three platforms, like, it could be a serious game changer in corporate philanthropy just between those three. I mean,
Yeah.
literally can make the entire space change to how we do that.
I agree.
Yeah, hi. I work with a lot of grassroots organizations who are essentially are volunteering themselves doing this nonprofit sort of work. And I've noticed that there's, with many of your types of organizations, there's not really an opportunity for these grassroots organizations to actually, be provided with your opportunities because you have to be an official 501c3 and all that stuff. So how do grassroots organizations sort of, be provided with what you call?
And also, that's a great question. We just had a big debate, who should be let into the VolunteerMatch system? And our current policies will welcome all tax-exempt organizations. But from a scaling point of view, we use GuideStar, the IRS, and Great Schools as a database. When someone registers, we bounce their application off one of those databases to see if they exist. Mostly to try to maintain some, it's mostly to keep out, the bad apples. It's not even to keep out the bad apples. It's really to keep out for-profits. It's really to keep out, some for-profit company that would want to come in and kind of take advantage of that audience. It's almost more for marketing purposes. But one of the most difficult corner cases for us is differentiating between, a well-meaning group of people that are just kind of self-organized and they're looking for more people to come clean up the park, and somebody doing something that we are kind of afraid of. And we've never really figured out that riddle. I think there's better, if I had the money, I'd pursue kind of an Uber/Airbnb strategy, maybe original eBay, where you just create a trust network and you just get people that kind of interact, and maybe you would require them to log in with their LinkedIn profile, so you at least have some visibility to who they are. But right now that's a limitation that we can't serve. It's really hard for us to serve anybody that isn't already registered in some way, because we use that as our framework for kind of accountability. But it troubles me that there's a lot of energy that we're not supporting.
Yeah, and I agree that it's very similar to, I think, someone's question back there around whether we allow B Corps, social enterprises, other entities to post opportunities. I mean, 90% of our opportunities currently come from VolunteerMatch. They are the world's largest database. And so we kind of make it more their problem. But you can't go on to LinkedIn and nonprofitbuildings.com and post an opportunity directly. And we have the same internal discussions. And the recent edge case was around political campaigns. And a political campaign post volunteer opportunity. So that literally just happened today. And I mean, my concern about that is that people don't understand. People sometimes confuse LinkedIn from the poster. So if you're a staunch Republican and you get, in your LinkedIn feed, Jim B, Job to be interested, that we now integrate the volunteer opportunities in. If you get, an opportunity to go volunteer for, some candidate that you hate, you suddenly hate LinkedIn instead of understanding the system. So those are some of the conversations we had. And I do think it's something that the sector or the field have to catch up with, because the sector is ahead of us. There are all these grassroots, very individual, even employee-led or individual-led initiatives for fundraising, for volunteering, and the infrastructure hasn't caught up with that. So I think it's a big question mark. Maybe even a future forum here at SF Tech for Good to maybe even figure out.
I mean, what would you suggest with grassroots organizations that want to leverage your...
Well, so on LinkedIn, the way you could leverage it is search. That crazy search, unbelievable tool I just showed you that's free. So you can go and search right now for somebody who works at Google, went to Stanford and knows finance, because you're looking for somebody to help you build things. You can go search for them for free right now and find a shared connection or reach out to them directly.
We have time actually for one more question.
She raised her hand. Okay.
Thank you so much. This was really wonderful. And I want to speak about the nonprofit side. And Joel, that was probably one of the most eloquent descriptions of what it's like to work at a nonprofit. And really, what and I have led multiple service engagements on the nonprofit side. And what Taproot has taught is really about acting like a paying client. Just because it's free, it's not less than. And so, and we kind of pushed up against that with help outs, which I think was the first foray for Taproot Plus. And we had multiple engagements that we had set up. And we met Sil Tilney that way, you know very well, incredible person, now a friend and mentor. And then we had other engagements, just 1 hour long, help outs through Google. And they look great on LinkedIn. We did the event, it's perfect, set up the CEO's time, everyone was ready to go, last minute cancellation several times, no explanation. And so I feel like the volunteers don't always realize that people working at nonprofits, we wear 5, 6 different hats. And that's a huge opportunity cost. For you, it's just like, oh, it's 1 hour or whatever. But if it's a last minute cancellation, everybody has dropped everything to be there for that 1 hour. We can't do anything else. And so my question to you is, how are you vetting those kinds of volunteers to understand that? I think Taproot does it. I don't know about Taproot Plus, but that's a power of the service engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say that one of our heresies that we started early on and almost lost our heads over was we dismiss volunteers. They may not know they've been fired. They still get the emails from us about all the things going on. But they're not invited to.
Just move the office? What did you do? Just like.
Yeah, it's just there's an email alias somewhere there. So most of it is obviously everyone wants to participate with the best intentions. You can't always discern what's going to be the best outcome, and we coach and we all want to support those experiences to have them work out well. But in cases that they don't, it's important as the intermediary that we hear back, so that we can keep working to what I think is protecting volunteerism as a important social vehicle in our society. And if we diss it and dismiss it because of the bad experiences, we're not trying hard enough to solve for those and take charge of our role in those relationships.
And by the way, I should give Taproot credit, because Taproot, the consulting arm is who helped us create our whole strategy around the volunteer marketplace. And one of the ideas that they had suggested, why they thought that we could help reduce the flake factor, is social capital. So if you, had agreed to go participate in the first graduate strategy session, and I knew you were connected with Greg Baldwin, and you didn't show up. So I see on LinkedIn you're connected to Greg Baldwin, you didn't show up. It reflects badly on Greg Baldwin. You know that he's a shared connection. So when we can build in social capital, people tend to behave better. And that's the whole reason why comments, anonymous comments are so scary, and non-anonymous aren't, because people have their either professional or social capital tied to it. Right. So I think there may be something in there that we could push on.
Yeah, and I would say just the last piece of it is, I think as the marketplace matures, nonprofits can be finicky here, and say I think the perception that you need to volunteer so much that you have to endure flaky people, it's not going to solve the problem for a project. But I think nonprofits finding the courage to say, we're doing really important work and we're looking for someone in particular. The other piece is kind of the corollary to it. We want nonprofits to have more volunteers for a particular position than they actually need, so that they can pick the best person to fulfill that role. That's an anathema to the volunteering space. The volunteering space is lowest common denominator, warm body, you got to have a position for everyone. And I think the more the marketplace is discerning and able to say, we need a web developer who knows Drupal, and that's what we're looking for, and we had 3 candidates and we picked one, that's really hard to do as a nonprofit, but I think that also will help reinforce a culture of success and impact, and the people, the cream will rise to the top.
Now, just a quick comment. Taproot Plus is structured so that the volunteers compete for the one opportunity.
Nice.
We've inverted it so that every nonprofit gets up to 3 options of volunteers. But let's turn over some final comments before the networking begins.
I just want to say what a privilege it is to be invited to this event, and thanks to the organizers. I clearly don't get out of the building enough. It actually seemed from afar that there was actually, it's a great group, and people seem to be interested and engaged. And I hope, the only real thing I hope is that whatever you're dreaming in your own mind and that you're kind of thinking about and finding a new solution, that you'll just kind of use this as another excuse to kind of redouble your efforts. And that the work that we've started over the last decade will just be a starting point for some transformation in both kind of the nonprofit and social engagement space that will keep pushing our society in a direction that is positive and beneficial and participatory. Just don't settle for what we've got right now. It's not good enough.
And I'll just say that I could not be more bullish about human capital. And from where I sit and looking across the 385 million members on LinkedIn, and even where I sit and getting just the constant inbounds from friends who have such an appetite to make an impact in the world. And really, I really do feel like it's the old, there's like $20 bills everywhere and nobody's picking them up. And we just have to figure out a way, I mean, all of us, to do a better job of connecting this extraordinary intentions of so many people with the extraordinary needs of such terrific organizations.
And I'll riff on that. Taproot's motto is "Make it matter." The intent there is we have only so many slots of time available in our lives, and a lot to do in our society. And for us to be fully invested, to be fully aware of who we are, it's not to close ourselves off, but to really take advantage of the opportunities and stretch into some unknown territory. I think between us and other organizations, we have made it, and thank you, technology, I don't know if it's a person, right? Thank you, technology, for making it so easy and accessible to be able to find each other, the like-minded, the connections, and to put the business stuff, to make that so seamless. We've never been in this kind of place before, and typically we see it being harnessed for consumer purposes, and let's give other forms of engagement a fair opportunity. And I think, thank you, by being here and participating today. You're obviously exploring that, and hopefully finding after today new ways to find each other. And if you are a nonprofit looking for a volunteer, if you're someone interested in volunteering in this room, let's not go to our phones and try to find each other. Like, maybe you can find each other like, sorry, I don't know how that works. How does that work? What's the algorithm on that? All right, thank you, everybody.
Though I thought that one guy, like, did he go over there?
My heart stopped for a second.
You were with me, but you saw I
kill someone
I felt like you were going to be there for me.
You grabbed it? Oh, good, good.
That's all